Hi rock fans, hi everyone. A couple of weeks ago I asked you, the viewers, what was, in your opinion, what was the Rolling Stones' best decade, the 60s or the 70s? And it was quite interesting because the votes were almost equal, it was almost tied. And this time I'm gonna ask you, in your opinion, what was the best decade, the 60s or the 70s? So first of all, let's take a look at their classic albums, their best album. I'm gonna start with the 70s. I think that most of you agree that Who's Next and Quadrophenia were their best album from the 70s. Okay. Now from the 60s, I think that Tommy was probably the most popular album, but there's a lot of people who always forget about that album, in my opinion. And I'm talking about the Who Sell Out, which was their first concept album, and this album was praised by many critics, and some the album was regarded by some of these critics as their best albums. So I think it's almost tied, if we take the Who Tommy and the Who Sell Out versus Quadrophenia and Who's Next. It's almost tied. Now let's take a look at the rest of their discography. I think their third best album from the 60s, in my opinion, was My Generation. And if we compare My Generation, which was probably their third best album from the 60s, if we compare this to their third best album from the 70s, which was the Who by Numbers, I think there's a couple of good songs, on the Who by Numbers, like Dreaming from the Waste, Imagine a Man, Squeeze Box, of course. But I think overall, I think My Generation wins over the Who by Numbers. Now let's continue. A quick one, which is probably their fourth best album from the 60s, versus Who Are You, which is probably their fourth best album from the 70s. The Who Quick one was not as strong as My Generation, and of course it was not as strong as Tommy and the Who Sell Out, but there were a couple of good songs anyway. And versus, the Who Are You album, I think the Who Are You album was just okay. There were a few good songs, but it was just an okay album, and I think a quick one wins over the Who Are You album, in my opinion. Now, other than that, we have that compilation album released in the 70s, Odds and Sods, which contains songs recorded from both 60s and 70s. Songs like Glow Girl, Little Billy, and Faith in Something Bigger were recorded in the 60s, while other songs like Pure and Easy were recorded in the 70s. Now, if we compare this versus all the singles that the Who released in the 60s, because they released many singles, like I Can't Explain, Happy Jack, Substitute, I'm a Boy, Pictures of Lily, Magic, Bus. So I think overall, in my opinion, I think the Who were great in the 70s, but I think they were a little bit better in the 60s. So I vote for the 60s as their best decade. And I'd like to know your opinion. In your opinion, what was the Who best decade, the 60s or the 70s? So thanks for watching, and see you for my next video.